My name is Justin Anderson, and along with Grant Daly, we will be presenting our audit, juvenile detention. Many youth face long stays in facility designed for short-term support. Let me begin with 3 key takeaways from the audit. First, long stays in youth secure detention are increasing. That is, the amount of time youth spend in King County secure detention is longer, on average, than before the COVID-19 pandemic, and is now over 30 days. Second, that's an issue because secure detention is largely designed for and then operates as a facility for short-term stays of less than 30 days. And third, the continuing staffing shortages in secure detention negatively impact conditions for the youth there and contribute to low staff morale. I'll address the first and second topics, and Grant will cover the third. Let's begin with some data showing the changes in youth secure detention since 2017. This chart shows the number of youth booked into juvenile secure detention from 2017 through June of last year. That is, it shows the raw headcount of the youth placed in secure detention, but not how long they were there. Each of the points on the orange line is the number of youth booked into secure detention that month. Adding them up, in 2017, 1,429 youth under 18 were booked into county juvenile secure detention. And in the following years, the number of bookings declined year over year. The height of each of the blue bars corresponds with the annual booking totals in comparison with 2017. As you can see, bookings declined such that by 2022, despite a slight increase, the number had fallen to 390. It then increased more through the first half of 2023, the end of the analysis period for the audit, with 302 bookings. However, even with that increase, the amount of youth bookings was still less than half of that back in 2017. After a youth is booked into secure detention, they may stay for hours, a few days, or much longer, depending on the circumstances of their case. This chart shows the average youth secure detention population since 2017. That is, how many youth are in secure detention at any given point, on average, for that month. I'll just note here that, as an average, the scale is different than on the previous slide, and also that our method calculates average population slightly differently than DHAD, but is substantially similar. Over the 6.5 years in our analysis, the average population was highest in October 2018. Back in 2017 and 2018, there was a higher average population than in later years, primarily because more youth were booked into secure detention. The decline you see in 2019 reflects the decline in bookings, and the COVID-19 pandemic also affected this trend. By August 2021, the average population had fallen to 18 youth. However, since 2021, average population has increased. This is partially because of the increase in bookings since 2021, shown on the previous slide, and it's also because the average amount of time a youth spends in detention has increased. This slide shows the change in average length of stay since 2017. Youth are now staying longer, on average, in juvenile secure detention than in previous years. Back in 2017 through 2019, youth averaged between 12 and 17 days in the facility. And after a slight dip during the COVID-19 pandemic, the average increased and continues to grow. As of the end of June last year, the average length of stay in secure detention was 36 days. So why is this important that youth length of stay is increasing? Let me provide a little contextual background. Over the past few years, there has been a concerted effort among county partners and at the state level to reduce the number of youth booked into secure detention. The major driver for this work is because research has shown that time in a controlled corrections type environment increases recidivism. Put simply, kids who spend time in detention have a higher likelihood to reoffend. So there's been work to lower the number of youth booked into secure detention, primarily in 2 areas: expanded diversion options and increased booking standards. That is, increasing the thresholds for who gets booked based on the circumstances of their alleged offense. These efforts contributed to the decline in secure detention bookings I showed back on that first chart. Altogether, this means that the average stay for youth in secure detention is now over 30 days, but it goes deeper than the growth in average stay. Here's what I mean. The calculations for average length of stay are based primarily on youth who are released during the period. We use releases rather than bookings because we know definitively how long youth spent in the facility once they're released. Simplifying that a bit, in the first half of 2023, 301 youth were released from secure detention. And to be clear, release doesn't mean they went home. It means they left county secure detention, most likely to a state DCYF juvenile rehabilitation facility. Taken together, these youth had an average stay in secure detention of 29 days. And of those 301 youth, 60 were there for 30 days or more, or 20%. This may not seem like much of a problem, 20%. But the real problem is that we're looking at averages based on everyone who was booked or released, and not the averages of who is actually in secure detention at CCFJC at any given point in time. Instead, let's look at the youth who are in secure detention. Taking those 301 releases from the first half of 2023, their total time in secure detention corresponds to an average population of 47 youth on any given day over a 6-month period. Of those 47 youth, 39 were there for a stay of 30 days or more. And of those 39, 29 were in secure detention for at least 90 days. Of them, 20 were in custody for 180 days or longer, and another 9 for a year or more. Bottom line, this means that, based on recent history, more than 80% of the youth in secure detention at CCFJC at any given time will be there for 30 days or longer. More than half will be there at least 3 months, and well over a third, 40%, will be there for over half a year. This circumstance, that most of the kids in the building are there for long stays, has also increased over time. But if we just look at bookings and releases or average length of stay, we might miss it. So why is this important, that most of the youth in CCFJC are there for much longer than 30 days? Because youth secure detention is designed and operated as a short-term facility. County leaders and others agree that secure detention is short-term, but unfortunately, there's no specific definition of what exactly short-term means. Leaders generally suggest it is no more than 30 days, and accordingly, the offerings in secure detention typically run no longer than 30 days. But this means the focus in secure detention is on the large number of youth who cycle through the facility in the short term, rather than the 84% or more who are actually there. Which begs the question, why 30 days? Under Washington law, youth can't be sentenced to spend more than 30 days in county secure detention, like CCFJC. This means that the youth in secure detention who are there longer than 30 days are there for the most part awaiting resolution of their case, regardless of the type of case. And how long these youth will be in detention is somewhat unpredictable because it depends on the progress of their case. This last bullet is a key point. DHAD does not control which youth get booked in or how long they stay. Instead, that is determined by the actors in the justice system, the prosecutor, defense counsel, and ultimately, Superior Court. Put simply, the longer their case takes to resolve, the more time a youth will spend at CCFJC. We've shared a lot of averages, but what about individual youth? Beyond the averages, we found multiple examples of youth with very long stays. Over 200 youth had stays of more than 100 days, 14 of those with more than 100-day stay during the analysis period. And 29 of them were in secure detention for over a year. In addition, we identified many youth under 14 with exceptionally long stays. In 2018 and 2019, there were 140 youth aged 13 or under, that is middle school age, booked into secure detention. These youth spent an average of 6 days there over 2 years. Then from early 2020 through mid-2023, 104 youth under age 14 were booked into secure detention. Only 3/4 as many, despite the additional year and a half of time. However, over that period, youth booked when 13 or younger spent an average of 25 days in secure detention. Why the increase? Because of a few youth that pushed the group average higher. During this period, a total of 21 youth under age 14 spent more than 15 days in secure detention, including 7 that spent over 90 days. Notably, none of these cases featured adult charges, and many were not facing serious felonies. So why does length of stay in secure detention matter? Youth with long stays in secure confinement can have specific needs in terms of substance abuse services, mental health services, educational and vocational training that are different than short-term youth. This is true regardless of where they're held, whether they're in local county secure detention or a state juvenile rehabilitation facility, or someplace else. But youth in CCFJC secure detention do not have access to the breadth of these services. So, as county efforts have focused on reducing secure detention, for the youth that are currently there, this has no effect. If being in a corrections environment is harmful, being in one without services aligned for long-term stays is worse. As we explain in the report, the current timeline for the county's care and closure effort is 2028 and beyond. This means that there is a gap for the youth who are currently in detention in providing the level of services needed, regardless of the location. If a goal is to reduce the negative, that is, traumatic, impacts of secure detention, the county must consider the needs for the youth who are there. Hence our first recommendations. We recommended that DHAD examine CCFJC's secure detention program and identify the needs of youth based on the changed conditions in the facility, accounting for the youth who are actually in the facility and how long they stay there. We also recommend that this planning align with the county's care and closure effort and state DCYF, given their roles. As part of the audit, we also looked at DHAD's data reporting on juvenile detention. DHAD provides summary reports available on the county website that include monthly averages for juvenile lengths of stay. But because they're reporting averages, the particular circumstances of youth with long stays and the nature of who is in CCFJC can get lost in those averages, like in the example I showed earlier. Instead, for example, DHAD could report on how many youth have been in custody for 30 days, or 90 days, or a year. Given the importance of the conditions in the facility itself, we found that DHAD could use its strong data capabilities to provide more information and, in turn, help provide greater transparency into the circumstances of the youth who are in secure detention. Hence our recommendation. Sharing broader data measures would help inform DHAD's own efforts and also provide critical context to the other actors in the criminal justice system, along with county leaders and the public. And with that, I'll hand it over to Grant for the rest of our presentation.
Thank you, Justin. Hello, I'm Grant Daly with the King County Auditor's Office. And for the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to talk through how staffing challenges across multiple job types at CCFJC has impacted service delivery for youth in secure detention. In conversations with our team, the youth at CCFJC largely share positive things about the juvenile detention staff, noting that they could tell that the staff cared about their well-being. And as the facility is increasingly made up with youth with longer lengths of stay, it's important that the staff that these youth interact with on a daily basis have what they need to provide the appropriate and consistent care. There's been considerable effort and changes to policy, both locally and at the state level, to ensure that youth spend as little time as possible confined to their cell as a result of punishment, with an acknowledgement that cell confinement has many adverse impacts on mental well-being. But punishment is not the only reason that youth may be returned and confined to their cell. Periods of low staffing at CCFJC lead to youth spending more time in their cell. Low staffing also adversely impacts the ability of the facility to meet the educational, mental health, and recreational needs of youth. And amid periods of low staffing and a changing policy landscape, staff and management at CCFJC have consistently described the working culture negatively, and staff noted that low morale and a negative working culture contribute to high turnover. So to begin, it's important to review the staffing challenges facing the juvenile division. As you can see with the green line on the chart, the juvenile division has planned for between 90 and 99 juvenile detention officers, or JDOs, to conduct their work since 2019. However, as you can see with the blue line, DHAD has not been able to fill these positions. And while the juvenile division reached a high of 94 JDOs in 2020, staffing levels decreased thereafter, most notably throughout 2022, before reaching a low of 68 juvenile detention officers in March 2023. These staffing shortages make it difficult for the juvenile division to fill all posts in a given 8-hour shift. This can lead to staff working 16-hour shifts in order to cover gaps, and this overall contributes to staff burnout. Ultimately, if there are not enough juvenile detention officers to cover posts on a shift, the facility operates on what is called a modified schedule. But what does this mean? JDOs need breaks during their shifts, but when staffing is low, there may not be a rover or an extra staff member who can relieve and fill a position during these breaks. So instead of taking their breaks staggered, as might be normal, the schedule is modified and all staff take their breaks at the same time. This then means that youth are returned to their cells while staff take their breaks. So what does this look like in practice? On the slide, you can see an example weekday schedule. The rows in light blue are the times when youth are out of their cells, engaged in activities or school, or have free time in the living unit for hygiene and phone calls, such as during that programming block in the late afternoon. Rows in yellow are the times that youth normally spend in their cell on a normal day. Altogether, youth spend between 11 and 13 hours in their cell during normal schedules. However, if there are not enough staff to cover certain posts, youth spend more time in their cell to allow for staff breaks. On the same schedule, items in orange are adjustments or modifications made to the day schedule to allow for those breaks. In total, this means that when a schedule is modified, youth spend at least an hour and a half extra in their cell, or a total of 14 and a half hours in their cell in a day, at times more. To get at the question of how often is this happening, how often is the schedule modified, a report by the Independent Restrictive Housing Monitor noted that in the first half of 2023, youth spent on average just under 2 hours a day confined to their cells due to staffing shortages. The report also noted that there were 2 instances where youth spent a high of 4.5 extra hours in their cells. So that would mean a total of 17.5 hours a day spent in their cell. So, in conversations with youth in secure detention, we heard that when they are confined to their cells, they don't have access to clocks, meaning that they're unable to track the passage of time, and the youth reported becoming disoriented. So, given the persistent staffing challenges, which have resulted in youth spending more time in their cells, we include a recommendation that the Juvenile Division ensure that all youth are able to see a clock when confined to their cells. During conversations with youth, we also learned that they were unaware of the ability or the process to submit a complaint to Council's independent Office of the Ombuds. So our report also includes a recommendation that the Juvenile Division work with the Ombuds to ensure that that process is clear to the youth. So beyond youth spending more time in cell, these modified schedules and staffing challenges have multiple adverse effects on service delivery. First, staffing limitations for JDOs, as well as low teacher counts from the Seattle public school system, can impact educational services in CCFJC. Teachers indicated that in 2022, JDO staffing levels were so low that classes were shortened to such an extent that teachers were concerned about their ability to meet education requirements. Next, mental health services are also impacted, both by JDO staff shortages as well as staffing shortages on the mental health team itself. Staff emphasized that even under a modified schedule, the JDOs, supervisors, and the mental health team ensure that youth still have the ability to meet with members of the mental health staff as needed. But they note that when the facility is operating on a modified schedule, it can be more difficult to provide these services. Finally, during conversations with our audit staff, youth expressed that while they enjoy the activities offered at CCFJC, they would like to see a greater number of the activities being offered. But they were upset when activities are canceled. And the activities can be canceled if for one of 2 reasons. If the staff from the outside organization, which facilitates the activities, are unavailable, or if there is low JDO staffing, which limits the ability of JDOs to support these activities. Now, in response to these concerns, Juvenile Division management, detention officers, and other staff have made a few changes, such as operational changes to help ensure that classes are interrupted as little as possible. But teachers and Juvenile Division management note that detention officers and their supervisors were stretching themselves thin to prioritize education, sometimes at the expense of other duties. Additionally, DAJD has since entered into a new contract that increases the number of mental health staff and expands the services provided. And in an effort to address staffing challenges more broadly, DAJD has implemented several recruitment and retention efforts since 2021, including hiring incentives, retention bonuses, and referral programs. But DAJD still struggles to retain staff. DAJD successfully hired 43 new officers between January 2021 and May 2023. However, 49 staff members have left employment with the agency over the same period, meaning a net loss of 6 staff over that time. So, why is turnover so high? Leaders and staff have suggested multiple root causes for the staffing challenges and high turnover, with both staff and management describing a working environment with low morale and persistent barriers that prevent building a collaborative relationship between staff and management. DAJD management and JDO suggested that some of the turnover is a result of staff leaving employment with the county to pursue positions with long-term career potential that they simply do not feel exists with DAJD, given the plans to close the secure detention at CCFJC. Throughout our conversations, employee turnover was a consistent concern for staff, and it might be a factor that both impacts morale and is impacted by morale. Multiple staff observed that this contributes to a vicious cycle, and that low staffing results into long shifts and periods of overtime, which then leads to increased levels of staff burnout and absenteeism, which then further reduces staffing levels. So, what can be done about this? Staff themselves shared that amid periods of low staffing, high turnover, an uncertain career future, and low morale, there have been little to no instances, opportunities, or incentives to highlight career feedback, particularly positive notes or commendations, nor any opportunities to discuss career growth and future career opportunities. Our report includes a couple recommendations aimed at increasing transparency regarding future staffing needs and potential placements, as well as to increase opportunities for positive feedback and career growth potential. First, we recommend, in order to highlight positive performance and identify areas for growth, that the Department of Adult and Juvenile Detention should regularly conduct performance evaluations for juvenile detention officers at all levels. Next, there are many ongoing efforts that would impact the future of juvenile secure detention and its staffing needs. Looking ahead, as the Juvenile Division conducts an assessment to clarify the treatment of service needs of youth, particularly youth with long stays, DAJD could use such information to identify the number and types of service providers that would be required to meet these needs. This plan can therefore clarify the types of staff needed and outline potential staff transition plans into new roles as appropriate. This therefore would help inform ongoing care and closure efforts while also providing current juvenile division staff with more transparency about their employment and potential for future career opportunities. So, to summarize the key takeaways of our audit, more youth are staying for longer periods of time in county secure detention, in a facility that was largely designed and operates for short-term stays of less than 30 days. And continuing staffing shortages in the facility contribute to low staff morale, high turnover, and disrupted services for youth in secure detention. And that concludes our presentation of this audit report. Feel free to submit any questions you have via our website.